It's time now for County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's County-Wide.
Welcome to County-Wide. I'm Paul David. Good to have you in studio today. Verde River Basin Partnerships. Tom O'Halloran in studio once again with us. This is part 4 of our series with the Verde River Basin Partnership. And I think we've been focusing a lot of attention, of course, on water. But the last couple of shows now, we've really talked a lot about this USGS model that, and I had forgotten, it came out back in 2011.
2011 it came out, and
it's been sitting around for a couple of years.
Like a lot of scientific studies and scientific reports, it kind of fell off the edge and went onto the shelf.
It's like that Indiana Jones warehouse, and they take everything and box it up and shove it in the back and just kind of forget it's there.
It just happens to be one of the most important tools available to us to be able to predict our future in water supply.
And there's a meeting coming up on April 11th. It's not, is it a meeting or a presentation?
It's a presentation. I'll get up and give a little presentation. Ed Wolf, a former USGS person, United States Geological Survey person, he'll get up and give a little perspective. Then the USGS will give an entire presentation and a question and answer period. And then a former one of the board members we have on our board is a former USGS hydrologist, and he was director of the Pacific Rim area.
Okay.
And he'll get up and give a perspective on the findings and all of this is developed so that the general public audience can understand it. It's not science up there.
What about the leaders in the area?
We've invited every elected official. We have a mailing list that we send information out to on a regular basis. We've invited every 350 different elected officials, council members, commissioners, P&Z. Everybody's been invited, and so we would hope that they would attend. Now, are 350 going to show up? No, but we hope that we get a great representation, because this is. I think at the last show I talked about that this is a landmark issue. This is something that can change the way we manage our water. And it has to, people need to recognize the importance of it. You know, it's what we're doing is you know, a model is a predictive tool. You feed all the information in, you get out the different scenarios that you developed. We developed in cooperation with the USGS Geological Survey 3 different scenarios.
Okay, I was going to ask you if there's going to be different scenarios represented.
There's 3 of them.
Okay.
And you know, we didn't want to go down this path of trying to predict population, because that's for somebody else to do, and trying to predict how much water we're going to be using, because that's what the model does, because this population has to require this much water. So what we did is say, okay, there's a study out there called SciWorms. It's being done by the Bureau of Reclamation and the Yavapai County Water Advisory Committee. And their initial study came up with the fact that we are going to grow as a county, as a region, to over 500,000 people in the next 50 years.
50 years, okay.
And so that population needs water. And they projected, based on some rough estimates of how much conservation they think they can do and stuff like that, that they would have an unmet, key word here, unmet water demand of 45,000 acre-feet of water needed that we don't have today.
Is that per day, per year, per month?
Per year.
Per year.
45,000, that's a lot of water.
Okay.
To give you an idea, Oak Creek flows at about 18,000 acre-feet a year for base flow. Okay. So that's the day in and day out. The Upper Verde flows about 17,000 feet.
Okay, that doesn't even equal 40 so far.
We're not to 45,000 yet.
We're not there yet, no.
No. Beaver Creek probably gets us there. So that's a lot of water.
Right.
That water flows 24 hours a day. You know, so when people start hearing an acre foot and then 45,000, think of the size of these rivers and creeks and say, holy cow, that's a lot of water.
It is a lot of water. Because I don't even look at the Verde River as really being a river. I know it is, but it's not much bigger than most of our creeks around here.
So is that water underground? Yeah, we have some of that water underground.
Okay.
But what happens when we start pumping more and more water out? Well, the last time we had a show, I talked about springs going dry because the water level goes down and the spring needs that
springs
water.
Up here, water's down here.
And it goes away. And that's what you start impacting your springs and your creeks and your rivers and your groundwater supply. And people have to deepen wells and all this other stuff because we aren't managing our resources appropriately. And so the model does that for us. It says, if you don't start doing something now, here's what you're going to face out into the future. And so we took 3 different scenarios. The first scenario is kind of what I call the no-brainer scenario. We say, we are not going to grow one more person. Not one more person. And we are not going to take one more drop of water out of the ground for the next 100 years.
Okay.
And then we identify what the impact of that is. And what does that get us? Well, it tells us that, I think in the end it'll tell us that maybe we need, even with where we're at today, we're impacting things. And so, and we'll find out about that on April 11th.
Right.
But if we are, to what extent, and what can we do about it, and how do we mitigate it, and how do we look out into the future and protect our economic viability? And because the worst thing you can do is to not protect one of the most critical resources you have.
Yeah.
You know, if I have a piece of land and I look around and it's on a river, and all of a sudden the river's going dry, that land becomes less valuable. If I have a piece of land and all of a sudden the water, my well goes dry, I have less value. It's to my pocketbook, you know. It's to our community's vibrancy. It's to our economic viability. And so we need to proactively be managing our resources. So that'll tell us where we're at today and what happens if we don't grow one more person.
Zero growth for 100 years. That's one scenario.
That's right.
Okay. But you know what? Before we get to scenario 2, let's take our first break, and then we'll come back and to look at scenario 2 and scenario 3.
Okay.
There is a meeting coming up, or a public presentation on Thursday, April 11th, 4 to 6 p.m. in Camp Verde at the Multi-Use Complex Auditorium. It's going to be about this USGS groundwater model we've been talking about. Stick around. Countywide will be back in just a couple minutes.
Having a fire escape plan is very important to keep your family safe and together in the event of a fire. When you awake to the sound of a smoke detector and smoke in your room, don't stand straight up. Carefully roll off your bed and stay low under the smoke. If your door is shut, feel the door with the back of your hand. Slowly open the door if no heat is felt. Always stay low until you get to the outside of your home. Always have 2 ways out of your house and a specified meeting place somewhere outside your home. Home escape plans should be drawn up and rehearsed on a regular basis. This could be the difference between life and death if caught in a fire.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
So, I got this new family, and I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy all day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
Welcome back to Countywide, Verde River Basin Partnerships. Tom O'Halloran in studio today. You've got a lot to say, so I'm going to try to keep the intro and outro as short as possible. But we do want to let folks know April 11th, 4 to 6 p.m., Camp Verde Multi-Use Complex Auditorium. A very important water meeting by the USGS will be there.
If you care about your water supply in the future, you need to come to that meeting, because that's where you're really going to find out the information.
So one scenario they'll talk about that night during that presentation is zero growth for 100 years. Where's our water at then? So what's scenario number 2?
Scenario number 2 is taking those study results of the population growth in Yavapai County over the next 100 years, and saying, okay, we don't want to be that optimistic. We want to say, and quite frankly, we don't want to be criticized for saying, oh, we're going to grow like mad, and so we're going to have this much impact. So we took those numbers and cut them in half. So if we only grow half of what's projected, what's going to occur to our water supply? And that'll be very enlightening, because if we're projecting this, and this is what's going to happen, then, you know.
What was that number again? The growth projection?
Well, the growth projection was, we're at 200 and some thousand now, up to 500 plus thousand.
500, okay.
And water,
45.
an unmet demand of 45,000 acre feet.
Okay, so we're going half that, so we're at 2,250,000? No, we're going to grow
22,500 people.
Okay.
And what's important there is that water, that 45,000 acre feet, that's just for people. That has nothing to do with the impacts that you're creating on your groundwater supply and your surface water supplies and stuff. That's just how do we get water to get it into the faucet for people, and not how do we deal with water here.
Okay.
So rivers, that's an irrelevant thing. We don't even talk about that in that water supply. And then the last one, we said, okay, what happens if we say we are going to do tremendous conservation issues in this area? And so we are going to look backwards and say, what can we do if we put a bunch of conservation measures in place? And where does that get us? And reasonable, not you know, so less demand on our system. We don't say what those conservation measures are, but we just say there's less stress on the system. Well, there's only a few ways to have less stress on the system. You either conserve and do appropriate management philosophy, or you stop growing and you start to shrink. Nobody wants to stop growing and shrink, because that hurts our economy too much.
Correct.
So conservation and appropriate water management is the way. It's the way for any one of these scenarios to get us to where we're going to need to be.
I think we're at that point all over the world.
Well, I just was reading the Wall Street Journal the other day, and up in Nevada, they're having a water war over there. There's a town of 4,000, a gambling town, and there's this valley up there, and they want to build a pipeline to start moving water in. Of course, Nevada has a bigger project to move water from up in the northern west part of Nevada down to Las Vegas. It's a huge project. There's water issues down in Texas. There's water issues out in Colorado. There's water issues everywhere. We're not alone in this. And in fact, we're in bed with it, because Nevada is within the Colorado River Basin. Colorado is within the Colorado River. So when you hear of a problem with water in Colorado, put it in your mind that that's going to eventually affect water supplies throughout the southwestern United States. Huh?
They're uphill from us.
They are uphill from us.
So if it's affecting them, it's bound and determined to affect us.
So we need to, what I'm hopeful for is the public gets to this meeting, they start to understand the problems from a larger perspective. They understand from the experts. And it's one thing to read something in the newspaper. It's something else to have that person look you right in the eye and say, folks, this is what's going to happen. Here's why we think it's going to happen. And ask me the questions that you don't understand. You don't get that out of the newspaper. You don't get it from me. You don't get it from you. These are the best people in the world at doing this. The person that's going to be there is the person that developed the groundwater model. The person that's going to be there is the person that's the author of the research that's being done, of the report that's going to be released at that event. You know, they're going to have their top people there. The developer of this groundwater model initially was the same person that developed a very successful groundwater model down in the San Pedro River. In fact, we've been meeting with them on and off now to identify some other concerns we have. Not with the model, but with water in general. What's our next step? Because somebody has to take that next step. If we don't have a regional cooperative effort by governments waking up and saying we need to work together, and they're trying, but for some reason they haven't been able to do that. I think it's more out of fear than reality. I mean,
fear of what?
Well, the myth is that if you have to do something about water, then you won't grow and it'll affect your economy.
It's the growth. The growth is the big scare, isn't it?
But that's a myth. Again, everywhere where we do appropriate management, we are allowed to still grow. Now, it means that we become proactive and it costs us less. Now, if we wait 10 years or 30 years to do augmentation, instead of saying we have the problem now, let's start to plan it out and work it out and stuff, we're saving a lot of tax dollars. You know,
yeah.
If we conserve water appropriately, we might not have to do augmentation to the level that's necessary. Today's water, the water we have underneath us, the water in the river, is the cheapest water we will ever see. Every time you start to do something else, augment water, do desalinization and stuff, the costs are exponentially higher. And so why not say, this is our resource, let's live with it the best we can, and then identify how we're going to deal with it from the conservation standpoint, augmentation, all those other ideas that are out there, or find out that some of those ideas are not viable and get them off the table and move towards, you know, it's one thing to say, let's augment water supply. And then people go, well, we can do that. Well, you can, but the cost is up here versus what your water's costing you today. So if you're concerned about your taxes, you better be concerned about the amount of money you pay for your water also.
Right.
Because that infrastructure costs a tremendous amount of money.
I can see water costing more than a gallon of gas someday.
There's parts of the world where that's already the case. You know, go over to Saudi Arabia and their desalinization plants and stuff. I mean, water costs a lot more. And of course, their gas is very cheap over there, but that's the case, you know, and I hope it never gets to that, but it will get to that if we don't manage it. It's management of the resource appropriately. You should not fear it, you should embrace it, because if you embrace it, that means you're going to take care of your resource. If you don't embrace it, it means that it's all guesswork, and you're hoping that there's going to be water there in spite of all the facts that are coming forward.
Let's take another break. Tom O'Halloran in studio today with the Verde River Basin Partnership. I'm Paul David. This is Countywide, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes.
I got no balls for losing.
Verde, he's in Basin.
Shocking. Is it road all the time? Just had a few drinks. This can't be happening.
Are we clear?
Clear. We're just buzzed. Just buzzed. You didn't tell us that, sir. You're right. This isn't happening. He'll be fine. I feel good.
Really?
No, not really.
Buzz driving.
Clear.
Maybe we should stop acting like it's no big deal.
Shocking.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
Fire can happen at any time. What would you try to save?
My family photos.
My grandfather's war memorabilia.
My dogs.
I'm firefighter Brandon Wacker with the Cotton Fire Department. A working smoke detector is your best defense in the event of a fire. Make sure you have a smoke detector in every room except your kitchen. Test them monthly and change the battery once a year. Take the time to save the things you can't replace.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
Welcome back to Countywide. We've got a few minutes left of the program. Tom O'Halloran in the studio today. We want to make sure we let everybody know that on April 11th from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Camp Verde Multi-Use Complex Auditorium, the USGS will be there with their model-based report.
Right.
And there are going to be 3 scenarios, and we've discussed those 3 scenarios. Did we discuss the 3rd scenario?
We did. That's the
conservation.
You can grow, but we're going to put in better water management procedures and conservation.
Why does it take all this? And you guys are the ones that are... Verde River Basin Partnership funded the USGS.
The Walton Family Foundation funded us to to fund the process.
But the municipalities didn't.
No, they haven't done it yet.
Okay.
And there's people out there that say, you know, well, the model's not up to the standard it should be. The United States Geological Survey released this model after an extensive peer review process within the agency and outside the agency. And the idea that this agency, which is the gold standard on doing this, would release a model, and they've said this model can be used.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the one.
This is the one. Now, again, getting back to the last time we talked, you know, we send people up into space all the time. We don't know everything about space. Well, is there every information available in the model? Yes. Is there new information that's going to be found out? Yes. Does that mean that what we are doing today is not credible? No.
Let me ask you this. Are we afraid that we're going to spend this money on getting this conservation implemented and then someday come back and say, oh, the USGS model was wrong?
No. That just hasn't happened anywhere.
All right, see?
Nowhere.
But is that a thought that's out there?
Some people might want to throw that thought out there for whatever reason.
But it sounds silly.
It's not only silly, it's not backed by fact. The fact is that where these models are used, you have the best water management process available to you. And
what's the holdup, Tom? What's the holdup on all this?
I think part of it's fear, you know. But when you're losing 21-0 at halftime, you got to go into the locker room and say, you have two things to say. We're going to just keep doing what we've been doing because we've been doing it so well, or we're going to go in the halftime. We've learned a little bit during this half. Let's change our strategy around a little bit and get into the second half and try to win this ball game. Well, you know, we're losing the game here when it comes to water in Arizona, in our region, and we better get into the halftime and find out what we have to do to change our strategy and move forward. And it's going to be people that are going to drive that process. People need to drive that process. All of us. And that's why it's so important for people to attend this meeting, because if they attend this meeting, they will be able to talk to their neighbors. They will be able to be those people that go out and say to others, you know, this is a problem. It's a verifiable problem, and it's something we really need to take care of for our investments, for the future of our children, and for the future of our region and the economy of our region.
That's it. We're out of time. Thursday, April 11th, 4 to 6 p.m., Camp Verde Multi-Use Complex Auditorium in Camp Verde, obviously, but the USGS model-based report will be there. You'll be there.
Yep.
Hopefully a lot of the municipality leaders will be there as well and take a look at this and say, you know what, we'll go ahead and move forward with this thing.
We've invited 350 elected officials and others. You know, it's their choice, but I would be there.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Tom.
Thank you.
Have a great day. That's today's Countywide. We'll talk to you again next time.
This has been Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Listen in each Tuesday and Thursday as we tackle the hot topics and talk to the decision makers across Yavapai County. That's Countywide with Brad Miller and Paul David each Tuesday and Thursday on this Yavapai Broadcasting station.